Hey everyone, Margarita here. I want to talk more in this video about the Tony Bologna situation and some of the communication that ended up going on further down the line long after we had stopped talking. Now, some of this communication began again, in what I'm going to talk about in this video. It began because my mother and her criminal group were heavily trying to finish the job that they had started and try to finish taking me out. And they were having a lot of trouble accessing me. They were trying to access me numerous different ways through numerous different people at this time. It had been going on for some months and then it continued on after this. But I was already aware because it was many different people they had tried to use. I was red flagged with every single one of them, and they were also trying to like reach out to me via different like social media type sites. And I don't actually just communicate with random people on social media either, or like just meet people on social media. A lot of times I don't even answer, respond to the messages. I don't even have time to keep up with them. So a lot of times I don't even respond at all. Here and there, maybe, but I definitely don't meet people off there either. But this had been going on for some time. She even reached out to some people who I then realized were paid many years ago, decades ago, and were a part of this a long time ago. And their behavior during this time was telling on themselves as well. So at this point, at least five or six, maybe more people had already tried to infiltrate my life, trying to get me to do things. And they were just trying to finish carrying out this job to gain access to the rest of this missing stolen trust fund, trying to get me to go out places. It was a mix. People I had no idea who they were, people who had found me online, or people that I did actually know in reality, and they were a part of this a long time ago. So by this time, I'm heavily putting all of this together. This was during the time I had some months to finally relax and piece everything together of everything I had been gathering the previous like 6 years. So I fully had the whole picture put together at this point. So now all this time goes by where I don't talk to Tony Bologna for about 8 to 10 months. And I believe this was October 2024 at this point. So yeah, it's been like 8 to 10 months since we had spoken at all. And I wake up to a message on my phone, and you could tell that he had been up all night drinking from the night before, and it was the early morning, and he was like up drinking from the night prior. And I had seen him do that several times as well. And I could tell by the manner in which he was responding to when I did eventually answer back with something, you could tell that he had been up all night drinking. So the very first thing I noticed when this communication started again was that uh, it was something about me being back in my house. So if you remember from the last few videos where I talked about how Tony Bologna didn't believe that this was actually my main home, this is my real life. I was only temporarily away from my home due to the original gas bill in 2021, having to leave for a couple of years, which was all known in advance. There was a set date way in advance to me ever even leaving or purchasing the other home of when I would be back, and at a maximum. And it ended up only being about 15 months that I was gone in total. So that whole time, and he told on himself numerous times throughout the course of the original time period we were talking, that he didn't, you could tell he didn't believe that that was my reality, that this is really my main home, that I really do pay all my bills. Nobody pays my bills. At no time could I ever not afford my home. You could tell numerous times along the way where he told on himself that he didn't believe that that was my reality. So upon getting this first message from him, and after all this time had gone by, he stated something along the lines of like he was confused about me being back in the home, like I shouldn't have been here or something. And I had been here all year working on the damage to the home. This was the first year of working on the damage. And now where we are today, it's just over 2 years and it's almost complete. So at this point, it had been almost a year of working on it. And again, it was already scheduled in advance that I would have already been back. And I had been back since like right after everything happened and he blew snot all over the bar, it was literally the following week I'd been back in the home. And he knew that at that time. So he was told this numerous times at that time as well, prior to us stopping talking. Then now I get this new message all these months later, and you could tell that he was just acting like I wasn't supposed to be in the home, or that that's not reality. Just confused about why I would even be in here, and just completely so far gone from reality, not living in it whatsoever. So now this is many times, this is at least 10 times of repeating this to him, if not more than that, repeating that this is my life, this is reality over here. And he was just very confused that I was even in the home, living back in my home, like I have the past 8.5 years, and acting like that's not reality. So right then and there, another huge red flag, telling on himself some more. And we didn't talk for very long. It was just like a couple short texts or whatever. And then because he had finally reached out, I was not planning on ever reaching back out to him. But because that happened, I then kind of used that as an opportunity to fish for more information, since I had lost that entire thread of text that he had wiped when he figured out why Charmaine was involved and she was documenting everything he was doing and all the crimes. So, a couple months prior to this is when I had reached out to Detective Mike Ramsey in Brownstown about all of these false charges my mother was trying to pin on me, and this fraudulent investigation that was going on behind my back. And they were trying to pin false fraud charges on me without investigation. It was my mother involved and Detective Mike Ramsey, and it was also a lady cop who had taken the original report, and they were all involved in this. Now, that was, I believe this was August 2024 when I had reached out to Detective Mike Ramsey myself, because I had never heard from him. This is regarding the money that came out of my dad's account, that when I hired him an attorney, the attorney stole the money, and the attorney's name is on the cashier's checks, or the money orders came straight from his bank account. The attorney's name's on it, not mine. And he assumed that I stole the money, and he believed it, and my mother believed it. Everybody believed it, and nobody actually investigated, and nobody ever talked to me. And I had the proof, and then I even called, and he still refused to talk to me or listen to anything I was saying about all of these crimes I had mentioned. Because it wasn't just that, I took it a little further than that, and he was just not listening to anything I was saying at all, still refusing to investigate, demanding that I give up the money or tell him where I spent it on, or what drugs I spent it on, basically. And none of that was reality. Literally, the attorney stole it. So he didn't believe it. He didn't even want to believe that. And then he never even wrote that in the police report either. Still continued on, had no intention of any further investigation, just still kept running to try to pin these false fraud charges on me. The entire Brownstown Police Department, I believe the whole department could have been on it. I'm not sure exactly how many people were in on it in total, but at least 2 officers, him and the lady cop who took the report. So if you go back and watch those videos, I talk about it in those 2 videos that I released in 2025. So that all had happened. And then he still tried to move forward with charges in December of 2024, because then I eventually got the FOIA requested documents and everything that came out of it, where he was still in the background maliciously trying to charge me with fraud, because he promised my mom, as long as she got custody of my dad in probate court, that he would be able to charge me with fraud. And then once I'd be doing long-term jail time or prison time, they'd then be able to get access to the rest of the missing stolen trust fund. So that's where the probate court started playing out illegally as well with all those people. And there's also a video on that from last year in 2025 also. So all that was going on. And because I knew Detective Mike Ramsey was doing all that, and I knew Tony Bologna was directly connected to him, I then took it a step further and messaged him probably about a week or so after this one little short session of texting, when he didn't believe I was back in my house. So this must have still been like October 2024. And because I think it was the day I tried to go see my dad at the care facility, and they called 911 on me within 60 seconds or 2 minutes, I think it was. I'm pretty sure that was the day I messaged him. So then I took the opportunity to, because now I had further information about what was kind of going on at the care facility, and because that's Romulus, Michigan, so that's another separate issue. But I've also made police reports in advance in Romulus, Michigan, prior to all of those crimes happening, where there's more proof of what was actually going on, because I can prove my mother's the one who committed the fraud and stole the money and tried to kill my dad. And I have the proof of all of it, but nobody's investigating. So I got further information that morning regarding what they thought and how things were playing out in that department. That's when I took the opportunity to message Tony Bologna later that afternoon. And I said something along the lines of, oh, I really need to talk to you about Brownstown trying to put false fraud charges on me, something, something. I forget what I messaged. I had a lot of things going on that day. And he actually kind of like brushed it off, acted like he was really busy drinking. And it was, I don't know if it was Saturday or if it was a Sunday, but football was on, and he was just acting like he was drunk at a football party that afternoon, and he was too busy to talk to me, and that he'd get back to me like during the week. Well, I did that because I knew he was directly connected with Detective Ramsey. So I wanted to see what his response was to all of this. And basically, he told on himself some more, because then he never messaged me back after this. And you could tell by whatever I put in those couple messages that it was urgent, it was really important. And then it was also pertaining to my dad. I think I said something about that. And I never heard back from him. So, that's pretty important information, like everything I had said regarding my dad, me being banned from my dad fraudulently, like just never being able to see him again when everything's lies and delusions, and these are crimes. And then separately, these false fraud charges that his buddy's trying to pin on me. So, some time goes by, because then he never answered back. So then I want to say about 3 to 4 months go by from that point, and don't hear from him the whole time. And the next time I hear from him, he is basically trying to invite himself over to my house for sex. And so, mind you, like I said, I've been working on the damage to this home as of right now, because it's February 2026. I've been working on the damage to this house since January, the first week of January 2024. So 25 months I've been working on the damage to the house. At this point, it is almost complete. There's just a bunch of small finishing touches. But so you got to think, all this time I have this going on, and I'm working with the insurance company. I have all these batches of checks coming. They're spaced apart, and some of them are smaller checks, some of them are bigger checks. I have all these different checks coming over the course of all this time. And so that's what's determining when I'm working on stuff. It's not really up to me. And then I was filming the videos in between, and then just trying to get done what I could in between and take care of everything that I could, and try to make my money like in between all this, and pay all the bills and keep things running. So the other part of this is, I only got a portion of the house paid for, because it didn't cover the entire house, the damage to the entire house. It only covered part of it. So I had to do a lot of the work myself also. Now, throughout the course of all this work going on, I had numerous different people coming to help me work on different things, depending on what room and what area we're working on, what job is being done. I've had numerous companies out here, and I've had numerous just people that I knew helping me as well for a lower dollar amount. So throughout the course of time, that's also been going on. And so during this time, Tony Bologna's wanting to reach out to me and trying to invite himself to my house for sex. I also had one of my high school friends that was over here. He spent the night like a few times, and with his daughter. And because she's a little bit younger than my son, but her mom had passed away when she was younger, and so she like didn't have a mother figure. But I also have like a really big house, so there's a lot of room here for the kids to like play and spread out. And like she was more comfortable here, and she was kind of like enjoying her time here when she was here. And then I had my older kids here at one point, and so there's a lot of space for all of us to kind of spread out and just like run a household while we're working on these things that needed to be worked on. So he was helping me with a lot of this stuff. And then my oldest son's car kept needing to be worked on, and he did that as well. So he was helping me with numerous things, whereas like I'm kind of like helping with his daughter at the same time. He was like needing some help with his daughter. So it kind of worked both ways at this time. Like we were not dating, we were not in a relationship whatsoever. He's somebody that I had known since I was literally like 14 or 15 years old. And we had talked numerous times. Like, I think we were talking, I don't even remember how we ran back into each other, but we were talking, and I knew he did some of this work on different things. And then at one point, I needed help with this project or that project. So he had already come and helped me numerous times months prior with some of the projects that I had going on. And then I was like, oh, okay, so I got more money. Like, let's at least get the materials bought for this, and let's get this done or that done. Well, it was easier for us to just all kind of chill here and work on things like when we could, because we're just buying the materials, and we would just wake up here, and then we would just eat here and then like fix what we could. And so there was time periods where him and his daughter were staying over here for like a week at a time, because it was just easiest for us to get the work done that way versus like me coming and picking them up like every day, or however it was coming. The way it was, the way the money was coming, and then the way we were getting the work done, it was just easiest for them to stay here a week here, and then like some time would go by, I get another check, I'd pick them up, they'd come stay for like another week. And it's not really a big deal, because I've had, the whole time I've owned this house, I've had many different people kind of just come and stay here whenever, because the house is big enough to accommodate that. But at this time, so now I had maybe, uh, I don't know how much I had gotten from the insurance company, but only the main floor had been completed like 100%, but not the upstairs portion yet. So we were just starting to chip away at the upstairs portion at this time. I think only maybe the master bedroom was done, but the other rooms were not done. So like nothing else was done. Not the basement, not the rest of the rooms upstairs. So and not the bathrooms. So we're working on all of this stuff. And so this had been going on. Now it had been slightly over a year that we'd been working on everything. And I was still waiting on a couple more of the bigger checks to come, which did eventually come during 2025. They were spaced out during 2025. So this is the beginning of 2025 now. So now Tony Bologna is wanting to come over for sex, and I have, the work going on in the house. It had been going on, and I'm some ways away from finishing it all and still working with the insurance company. And I had like I said, numerous things running, and then I finally hit a workers' comp court date, trying to hopefully get some money from that, which I ended up only getting $4,900, lost over $1 million, paid for my own treatment out of pocket and my son's treatment. So all these things were kind of going on at this time. And then like still working with the homeowner's claim itself, because that was its own set of paperwork by itself. So, and then we're doing the physical work on the house. I have all these things going on, but Tony Bologna again did not comprehend that that was even a part of my life, and that this house was already supposed to be producing income in 2022, and I should have been on to the next home, already living in the next home. Because of whatever delusions he was told by my mother or the group of people she's involved with, or however he was perceiving my situation, he was not perceiving it as the reality that it was, and what was actually going on regarding any properties that I owned in the past or in the present or in the future. He wasn't with the reality of any of it. So at this point, he decides he's going to stop by. And this happens to be like during one of the time periods where my friend and his daughter were here, along with like my daughter and her friend, and then my son that's always with me, he's here. So we were here doing different things, and he stops by like under the impression that like we're just going to go have sex in the middle of the day, like I don't have all these things going on. And then I did say prior to him coming over, like, I don't even have because he said something along the lines of, well, I thought you had a bunch of different sex rooms in your house, and or in that place or whatever. And I'm just like, well, yeah, I mean technically, but I'm like I didn't mean pertaining to me using them for that. I meant like my teenagers were doing that, because it wasn't me doing that. But the problem with all this was, like I said, we were working on the house. The majority of the rooms, like all of the rooms that are individual rooms, didn't even have flooring in them. There was literally nothing in a whole bunch of the rooms, including the basement, including most of the bedrooms. There's nothing in them, because we're working on all of it. We're putting it all back together. So everything's literally just like vacant. I think we finally got all the paint done. But there's not even flooring, there's not furniture, there's nothing in most of these rooms because we're still putting everything back together. And I hadn't replaced the majority of the furniture that I lost either because I was waiting until everything got put back together. So then he stops by and like expecting like he's just going to come in and we're just going to have a bunch of sex in the middle of the day. And like I don't have all these things going on. And now I've got like an extra smaller child here as well. And there's not even like, oh, and here's the funny part. There's not even a bedroom door on my bedroom at this time either. Because months prior, my daughter threw another fit because she'd throw fits from time to time due to my mother repeating delusions to her. And she ripped off another door, which happened to be my master bedroom door. So at this time, the one room that does happen to have flooring and it doesn't even have a door on it. So he just like kind of comes over and is kind of surprised that like I have all this stuff going on, as if, like I've been mentioning all along, I have all this stuff really going on in reality. And he was never wanting to live in reality about all these matters that I have running. And then he shows up and that is what's going on. But didn't really want to believe that that was my reality, but it was. So that's what was going on when he got here. And then, I mean, there was just people spread out throughout my house as we're just like taking care of this and that. And the kids had stayed up kind of late the night before because we had lost power for a significant amount of time. And so it kind of like stopped everything we were doing. And then the kids were up late. So his daughter was still sleeping. So now we have people in like basically every room running in and out. We got all these things going on. And so he wasn't able to like come over here and carry out whatever he thought he was going to carry out. That's not what was going on. And then also at the same time, I didn't stop him from coming over because I'm thinking like, well, I think maybe he needs to like kind of see reality, that this really is reality, since he doesn't live in reality and doesn't believe this is my real life or my real house and this is how things go. So then he came and like found exactly what reality was in that moment. It's just quite a bit of the housing wasn't put back together. And then I don't know how long he was really here, but then he ended up leaving. And then I also didn't hear from him again for, I think he messaged me after he left and he said something about that I looked better than the previous time he had seen me, which was like all those like a year prior. And then he said something about how tired I looked that year prior. And it had nothing to do with me being tired. It had to do with the brain injuries. It had to do with the mold that had taken over my home. And I had not, because that time he's seen the house as soon as everything got tore out, but the mold was not addressed. So it was just a bare blank slate. But I was sitting here in the mold and it was affecting my brain. And I was so sick from it because of my condition, my brain tissue being open. The mold was loading up into my open brain tissue and I was getting real sick from it. And that was that brief period of time he stopped by at that one time and mentioned something about it in that text right after he left, talking about I looked tired, like still not living in reality that these are the effects of the ongoing condition and the symptoms and the exposures that I told you that I can't have, that I live this way. I live with continuous symptoms and the exposures add to it. It's not that I'm tired. It's because I have these brain injuries and now I've been breathing in mold at the time that he's talking about. So then he mentions it, in that text and I'm like, what a weirdo. Like he's totally not with reality whatsoever. And so I never messaged him back after that. But then a couple months go by, like, I don't know, 2 to 3 months go by. And he's then trying to get me to come to his house for sex. And at this time, now there's another round of Fukushima flushing going on. There's more wildfires going on. And I had been sheltered in place at this point. So when either one of those go on, I do have to shelter in place for some time, sometimes a month or two, maybe 3. Sometimes I can kind of go out real quick, get what I need and come right back. But when those go on, I have to stay sheltered in place. So at that time, that was going on. And it had been going on for at least a month at this point. And I had also gone about 6 months total with no treatment whatsoever, because this is at the same time I was still working it out with my homeowner's insurance and they were about to replace my oxygen concentrator for my chamber. Now it's literally been 6 months and I have never been that long without a treatment since the day I started treatment in 2019. At the beginning of 2019, I'd never gone that long with no treatment. So because of that, and because of all the spills and the exposures and the flushing and the fires, Here I was slowly sliding backwards, just slipping away, not clearing anything that I'm taking in. Even though I'm sheltering in place the majority of the time, I'm getting real sick. I'm sliding so far backwards. I'm barely functional. I'm extremely unwell. My brain's burnt. My whole system was overloaded with all these different particles, and I was barely moving from room to room in my house at this point. So I was literally working very heavily with the insurance company. We were going back and forth for like a couple week period, and I was on the verge of them getting ready to wire me the payment to at least get my concentrator so I could start treatment again. Even though I'm only working with my home chamber, this was during the time period the hyperbaric chamber explosion happened at the center in January of that year. So that had just happened. We were still treating at the center from time to time, and now I was desperate to get the ball rolling on the homeowners insurance replacing my concentrator. So that was actually going on in that moment. They were about to wire me the money at this time, but they had not done so yet. And because I'd gone so long with no treatment and slid so far backwards, which can't happen because it's really hard to get back to like a functional place and get the flow going. And I still haven't gotten back to that place, and it's been almost a year. Still haven't gotten back to that from that time period because I lost so much treatment, so much time. So at that time, that's what was going on. And he's been aware of this. I stated all this to him initially, so now it's been what, a year and a half or over a year for sure. I think it had been like it was like 2 years, I think, at that point. And so he knew this initially from me telling him all this initially. He knew this, from the Fukushima flushing when it all started, when I was at his house, the very first round of the flushing in 2023. And then he knew about the wildfires from then also. So here he was acting like, here he is going around the injury like that's not what's going on, even though I said, like, I can't leave, I'm sheltered in place. And that I had been all these months with no treatment. And I'm like, basically, I wasn't too far from losing my life. If one significant exposure had happened, I wasn't going to make it much further without my concentrator being replaced for my chamber. And that's what the argument was with my homeowners insurance. And finally, they jumped on board and never argued with me again and just kept the checks flowing and kept everything running from that point forward. It was just a matter of getting over that hurdle and submitting certain documentation, which they did all finally receive. So that's what was going on in that moment. And I was so unwell. Like I was kind of just barely holding on, and I couldn't even like tolerate being around other people. I couldn't travel from point A to point B. I was just slowly slipping away. I think I even filmed a video and posted it on the YouTube because I didn't think I was going to make it at one point. And then it was right after I filmed that video that they ended up working with me and wiring the money so I could at least start treating with my home chamber. So that was all going on at that time. And now here's Tony Bologna trying to get me to come to his house for sex. Like what I have going on isn't going on. Here he is going around it, acting like I'm not injured, acting like that's not what's going on, acting like, I don't require treatment to stay alive. Now I'd lost treatment for a very long period of time, and this is not good. Which I knew from day one that if that ever happened, that was going to be the boat that I would be in. And I was 100% correct. That is exactly what happened. And now here he is acting like I'm just this regular person, like that's not what's going on. And then because his house is directly on the water, also, he's just acting like there's no issue when it's already been explained to him numerous times about what happened that last time. And he's still not like with reality. And he even messaged back with, "Oh, that's no way to live. That's no way to live, my dear." Like, what do you mean that's no way to live? Like you haven't been explained this all these times. This has not been explained to you what's been going on all this time. Because here he is acting like that's not reality. I'm just lying about everything still. So I'm like, wow, that's like so ignorant. Like I can't even. So I basically like never talked to him again after that little texting back and forth during that time period. Like that is extremely ignorant. The fact that he just kept showing up or texting me out of the blue and like going around the reality of everything, and like I'm like fighting to stay alive. I'm really not well. Can't even like leave home, and he's acting like I'm just this regular person. Like that's not been my reality since 2018. Like I've been homebound the whole time. Like he just really thought that short time period where I was temporarily away from my home and doing all that running around, he really thought that was my life, not anything to do with what I actually have going on, and everything that, that was going on in the reality of all the rest of the last 8.5 years, as if none of that was real. He really thought that that's not what I had going on. So, like, it's just extremely ignorant. The condition itself, the conditions in the outside air, and then like how I generate my money and what I have going on with my real estate investments and everything. Like he was just completely ignorant to the whole thing, still acting like I'm making up everything that I'm talking about, like the injury's still made up, it's all made up. I don't know. The whole thing was just absolutely absurd that somebody's even messaging me in that manner. And like I really just couldn't take it anymore, and I never talked to him again after that. Um, but like I couldn't even fake to talk to him at this point. But I had already known that here was my mother trying to get all these other people, or people in her group or whatever, all these other people, here they were trying to insert themselves into my life or take me places or reach out to me, or through all those other methods that had it happened over several months. Like it was over 6 months. I think this had gone on numerous times, and I didn't go out with any of them or talk to any of them beyond like a couple little messages here or there, if I talked to them at all. So I already knew that's what was going on, and that they needed to carry out the rest of their plan. Somebody was looking for an in to get into my life so they could finish carrying out their plan, is what it was. That's why he kept repeatedly messaging me back. And then there'd be a space of time where he didn't message me at all, where we weren't talking at all. And then like some time would go by. That's why that was happening, because they kept like telling him, oh, you got to try again. You got to try again, because nobody's able to get in, because I'm really that overloaded with things to do, on top of how sick I've been from going that long with no treatment, and then having too much on my plate, which has been going on my entire injury. And I'm not able to catch anything up. Nothing's ever gotten back in a working flow the whole time. So here they all were, just like trying to push him forward to kind of finish carrying it out, which is why those spaces were in between all those times he was messaging me. But then you could tell with what he was saying with each, like each time he'd message, you could tell by what his responses were. So when he was first messaging me, again, he told on himself about, he really didn't believe this was my real home, and this was where I'm supposed to be the whole time, and this is my real life. And so you could tell that in the first set of texts. And then the next set of texts, you could tell that he also didn't believe that that was reality at that time. Next set of texts, same thing. And then, when I finally messaged him back and try to throw the bone out there about Detective Mike Ramsey and these fraud charges, and see what his response was going to be toward that. And you could tell that by him never responding after I stated all that, like that's a definite admission of guilt of him being involved in the group and what's going on, because those were very important messages. Like what I had said regarding the matter, it was very important. I really didn't expect him to do anything about it. I just wanted to see what his response was. But due to the fact that he didn't respond at all, and it was something like fairly urgent and important, a couple matters, and then never responded, and then don't hear from him for like 2 to 3 months. And then when he finally does message, he's acting like we never had that conversation, and he's just going to invite himself over to my house for sex. So if that's something you were really after, you would definitely have to be like, you would have had to have answered the last text or address that last situation. You wouldn't act like none of that happened and just jump straight several months down the line and act like none of that happened, and you're just going to come on over to my house. So, I mean, he told on himself. So you can tell if you line up all the texts and you read them all, you can very clearly tell like what his agenda is, that he doesn't live in reality, that he's fishing to try to like insert himself into my life and cause problems, and like just everything he's saying. And you can tell that that's what's going on when you look at the messages and his responses or lack of responses, and then tries to continue on like we didn't have that last conversation a few months ago, and like what he was up to. So you can tell by the texts themselves. The proof is in the pudding. I have the proof now. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. And then at one point, oh yeah, there was one more thing, because I didn't ever talk to him again after that. But the one day me and one of my friends did go out to eat over the summer, and I didn't know who was screaming at first, but like we were leaving the place, and he was like in the street screaming from his car driving down the road. But I didn't really know who was screaming or who it was or whatever. We were just walking to the vehicle, and I still hear someone screaming like as we're getting in the car and we're leaving. And then all of a sudden I look up, and he's parked next to me trying to get my attention, parks on a handicap ramp, and has a girl in the front seat of his car still trying to scream and get my attention. And I'm not even like really sure like why he was doing all that screaming, trying to get my attention so heavily, when we hadn't talked at all in all these months. And then he must have really wanted to get my attention, because he pulled up right up on a handicap ramp. It wasn't even a parking spot. just to try to get my attention, which I thought was really crazy because we hadn't talked at all. But to go that far and do all that screaming when, like, he was at a way far distance for anyone to even notice, like, who's screaming what or why, or, he was in the street literally, and we were like in the parking lot by the door of this place. So for that to go on, I'm not even sure what that was all about or why he did all that. But he definitely parked in a handicap ramp, so that's kind of odd. But no, we haven't talked like since then, and just his behavior just says it all. Everything he was up to, everything he was doing. But I already knew I'd be releasing these videos as well, so I just didn't know like the order in which they were going to come out, and I had no intention of ever talking to him in the first place. I was just gathering information every step of the way. This had been going on, and then each time like he messaged me and I had an opportunity, I'd kind of gather a little more is what was going on. But yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to mention regarding that. But yeah, I'll be back with more soon. Thanks, bye.